to create a more just, caring, and sustainable world. To do that, we have two divisions. Number one is run by Jess Burnquist back here with their entire family, which I'm really so delighted by. Yes, thank you. Jess oversees a small but mighty team who are working with kids in classrooms, but also we have scaled up what we have been doing for the last 20 years as something called creative change makers. And that's certainly Gina Belmonte is a creative change maker like you wouldn't believe. But we're teaching kids how to learn about the Declaration of Human Rights, how to learn about UN, like you wouldn't believe. But we're teaching kids how to matter to them and learn how to tell the stories that can mobilize other people around the action we need if we're going to get the world that they want. Right now, kids are really concerned about their future. The other thing we have is our impact media division. We have 200 projects and productions who are actively working to raise money. They have a nonprofit status under Creative Visions, and we have another that are already out there in impact mode. And then we have hundreds of others that are in sort of alumni mode. But if you know of anybody who needs a nonprofit, we're probably going to be able to house them. And it's a phenomenal network of remarkable women driven by women, I will say. Thank you very much. And we would welcome the inquiries at any time. We want you all to come back, go on to creativevisions.org and say, get involved, sign up. We have been following just like what Gina's been doing for so many years with Sankofa, and just so, again, honored to have you all here. I'll just say one more word that my son, Dan, is larking about with your dad right now. I have no doubts at all. My son was killed in Somalia when he was 22. He was an artist, he was a photographer. He was somebody who passionately believed in the power of story. He was killed while reporting and doing photography as a photojournalist for Reuters News Agency. And the work you see here is Dan's work and the work in the hallway. But I know that just like with her dad, the power of these individuals who passionately believe in something that's bigger than themselves and are willing to go out there and risk everything to tell those stories. So thank you. We don't want you to risk anything except the journey back home. That's annoying. But can I just say how honored we are to have Mom here today as the honorary consul from Senegal. This is you. Bless us with your presence. Thank you. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm passing you back to Gina, and who has her family here, Maria. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Appreciate you so much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. This day could not have happened without several folks, but one in particular who has known me for a very long time. I thought she's known me longer than she has, but she corrected me today when she told me she didn't start with the organization of USA for Africa until they were already in motion and doing Hands Across America, and that's Marcia Thomas. Please give it up to Marcia Thomas. I had the very good fortune several years ago, I don't know how long, 6 or 7 years ago, to be invited to travel with a small group of activists and artists to Senegal. And of course I was like, oh, pick me. And I did get picked, and our incredible tour guide, mentor, mama, cousin, sister, auntie, doctor on site was the incredible Kumba Touré, who has traveled all the way from Senegal to be with us today. She's going to talk more about what she's here to do in terms of building community and building relationships. So I would like to invite you to have a seat wherever you'd like. I'll take this one. So before we invite the rest of the panel to come up, we're going to give a few gifts, which usually you do like at the end and you want to make sure you honor, but we're going to do it before so we can get that kind of housekeeping out of the way. Also, at any moment, if you need to use the restroom or go get something to drink or eat, please feel free to do so. Just round back in the back area there. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what we're going to give.
All right. See, that's my favorite part. I like to give gifts. So I picked few things and say, these are gifts for you so that you can give it to other people. So she can have one, but she can't keep all of it. The gift is to give. And so she decided to give these. These are from Senegal. They are hand woven clothes from maybe the people from the south of Senegal and Yago are the one who do weaving. So every thread is a motion, actually. They move their hand and weave this cloth. So that's a shawl. And then this one is from Mali and it's mud cloth. And I was just talking because tomorrow we'll be talking more about healing, but it's also healing cloth because the cloth is dipped into plants that are antibiotic and antiseptic, and traditionally it's cloth that is worn by people who have a weak immune system or who are in danger, like warriors or hunters or women after giving birth or just somebody who has a weak immune system. So,
And can you tell a little bit about, there's a drink we have from the baobab tree?
yeah, this, I mean, baobab trees, you have to bring them with you. I'm sure she has some in her pocket too. But hey, when you travel and you go home, you go far, you miss home. And most of the time, what you miss is the taste of home. And they say that even for migrants, the last thing to go out is, in culture is the food, because they can forget languages, they can forget a lot of things, but the food stays. So this is from the baobab trees, the fruit of the baobab tree. Normally it's just something that kids eat and stuff like that. But the powder now, people make juice out of it a lot in Senegal. A lot of vitamin C. It has been discovered as a strong, what they call them, superfood or something, but it's just something we used to eat as kids.
So, Kathy?
Kathy, come on. Yes, all the panelists. Yes. Come on, come on. I welcome. Yes. Come on. Yes, it's nice when it's cold. Yes. Yes. You're welcome. And fire. Always. Thank you. So thank you so much, Kumba, for explaining all of that. Faya, please come join us. Gay, please come join us. Pat, please come join us. We'll all be twins and triplets. I got one too. I chose also the mud cloth, the healing mud cloth. Mine's in the other room. But again, thank you so much, Kumba, for bringing them from your home and presenting me with them to give this. Thank you. Thank you. So welcome. Here we are. So Marcia called me. She said, Gina, Kumba is coming to town. And she wants to get in conversation with you. And she wants to meet some folks and build some communications and some relationships. I was like, great, let's do it. So here we are. So I thought it would be fun to learn more about what Kumba is really wanting to do. This talk was intended to be really about, and it probably will be, about Pan-Africanism, about anti-Blackness, about feminism, about art and activism, about what we are doing here in the United States and what is happening in other areas of the world and on the continent of Africa and in places where Kumba is touching the ground and working with people. And I thought, what better way to do that
conversation and to bring some of my people that I commune with, that I work with, that I know that they know more than I know. So I always want them in the conversation. And I'll first introduce Gay, Dr. Gay Teresa Johnson, who is an incredible force, healer, teacher, author, mother, like list goes on. And so I invited Gay because she has a very specific, for me, energy about her that I find extremely healing just on sight. And then when she shares and the way, lean into the way in which she shares with you. I've learned so much on how to present, and I'm still learning. So this is Gay. Kumba, you've met. Now, Thea came into the mix a little on the latter side. Kumba said, Thea's coming and she has to be a part of it, the conversation. And I was like, great, once again, all are welcome. And Thea is someone who I've also known for a long time, but very peripherally. So this is really the first time for us to be together in conversation and in community in this way. Thea is an organizer. She is an artist, as you've already seen. She is an incredible mind. She has an incredible wealth of on-the-ground experience and movement and being in community and building communities. And so Thea's here and she will also join us in this conversation. And Pat, who you've met, who I also have known for a while, and we've been for a long time trying to figure out how to work on projects together, how we can bring our communities together. And when I'm with Pat, I always see usually Kathy as well. And Kathy has been very generous to Sankofa, and Pat has been very generous to Sankofa, offering us an opportunity to be in the space, to work in the space, to use the space. But I don't ever really get to deep dive with Pat. So I thought, all right, well, I'm going to learn even more about Pat as we all do. So Pat Chandler is here as well. So we're going to dive into conversation up here. If at any moment something inspires you, or you will have a comment, or you feel like, yes, amen, you want to like snap your fingers, clap your hands, please feel free to do so. Please feel free to raise your hand to join into something that might be in conversation at the moment, so that we can all be in dialogue together. This is not like us and them. This is us and we. Okay, is that fair? All right, so I'm actually going to have Kumba start us off to talk a little bit about Farafina and what you're building, and then we'll jump from that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the space, for organizing all this, Marcia, for igniting, connecting, and Gina, thank you for just being so generous and accepting. And thank you to each one of you for every step you took to make it here. I always say now, you know, we've been through COVID, and we don't take for granted people's presence. Any movement that people make to come and join, get on plane, take cars, come in groups, we have to be, you know, really, we can't take it for granted, and we're grateful. Thank you for your time and for your presence. So beautiful to be here. Hey, Farafina, the Black Link, this is why I wanted Fire to come, because really it is the expression of our search for our people. It is that we know that as African, we are all over the world, sometimes not by choice, but the reality is that we are a global people. We live everywhere, we have all kinds of nationalities. And to me, building links between Africans, building a sense of history and connection is important not only for us to know each other, to fight racism, anti-Blackness, and so on, but is it important for the whole world, because we are children of this world in that sense, and we connect and weave everything together. So the first time I came to the US, 1996, I was about 20, 21, 22, and we flew from Mali under the leadership of Maria Keita, 22 of us, and we just flew into Atlanta and drove to Selma. Selma, Alabama is the place we first slept and woke up, and Fire and her family and her people took us around. And when I say around, it's really around. She drove that van. We slept on her floor, on other people's house, ate their food, but she took us Georgia, Tennessee, North and South Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi, you name it. We went to churches, we went to universities, we met Black farmers, farmers cooperatives, we met artists, you name it, we met. But the idea and the reason why we came was to learn also about African identity outside of the US. I was telling someone that it's not just general knowledge that we know about our history. You pick anybody on the street in Senegal, if they didn't do studies in history, they likely won't know much, not only about African history, but also of the history of the African diaspora. In my memory, the only moment where I saw a group of people know about slavery, really, and the Atlantic slave trade, is when the film based on Alex Haley's book, Roots, came out. That's the first time like that it became popular knowledge. That people are like, what? How? And people got, some people actually were getting angry and, starting to think that they need to fight back or something like that, because it's not something that you're taught, you don't know about it. So to me, Farafina is the name in Bambara, because it's my first language, it means Africa. It means also to be Black. So in Bambara, it's the same word. To be Black is to be African, is, that's where we are. And weaving those links since 1996, we've been doing this, exchanges coming back and forth, artists, academics, all kinds of people. But I thought that today we have so much more capacities, means of communicating, of translating, of learning, of knowing what happened before than we had then. So the question is, and that's a question I'm traveling with, and I'm asking people, what do we do now? What do we do with what we have, what we know, and what we are capable of? How will we take our potential? And I came to ask you that question, Gina. That is the reason why I'm here. Is we know that this link has been built before. People have been trying. Your father and people of her generation, they did what they could with what they had. What are we doing and what can we do? Not only for ourselves, but for everyone in the world. So that's the reason why I'm here, and I'm open to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Gumba.
Just had a quick clarification. When you said that nobody knew what had happened, but I mean, I learned so much about what slavery was in Gorée when I went to, so how come, so I didn't know what you meant when you said that they didn't know.
What I mean is that it's knowledge that is, I don't want to call it prime knowledge, but it's very small. Like you would be surprised to know so many people live in Senegal, never been to Gorée or don't know about Gorée.
That changed my life.
Yeah. But we live right next to it. I know many kids, many children who live in Senegal, they've never made it to Gorée. And adult people who live and die next to Gorée, they've never been there.
It's that way. I find it that way almost everywhere in the world.
Yeah,
really.
African history is not popular knowledge.
in the United States either. And well, and now they're trying to take it out as if it
Oh,
never
even the
existed.
small
So,
things that we have.
yeah.
Y'all, let's give Kuma. This is an amazing, amazing human being. And one of the biggest blessings is when I got invited to go to Mali. And I was invited by, I call her my mentor, even though she's younger than me, because to me, mentorship is not based on age, but wisdom. Wisdom. So another friend, Jane Self, I'm a songwriter. I usually write music to heal myself. Like the other night, I said, girl, you getting old. Don't you dare get upset about getting old. So I wrote a song. I'm getting old and I'm fine with that. so I'm used to writing music. That's healing for me. Like people pray, I do a lot of song and I share them. But when I got this invitation to come, I didn't know Kumba, didn't know Maria. And of course, I jumped for the chance to go to Africa. Someone bought me a ticket, going to Africa. But I didn't know what a blessing it was. But what surprised me, because even before we went to Africa, I spent some time in Nigeria. I don't know if y'all remember the brother that just died. We all went together. After leaving law school, we got invited to do some study in Africa. But I hadn't been to Mali. But to make this long story short, because we got 3 other panelists, a lot of people with a lot of questions. So to make this long story short, when I got there, I met Maria and Kumba, and I wanted to know, well, what is it y'all want from us? I want to make sure I'm, being obedient. They said, well, our people don't know what happened. All we know is that we woke up one morning and daddy wasn't there, mama wasn't there, sisters and brothers weren't there. They just disappeared. And they kept disappearing, and we didn't know what happened to them. And for years and centuries, we thought that they were all dead and gone. So when they realized that there were people in America and the Caribbean and throughout the world that of African descent, they wanted to know what happened to the lost ones, because that's what they referred to us as, the lost ones. So I remember that first night when we got there, when we were talking about the lost ones, and I remember the song that I wrote on the spot. I'm so glad we found the lost ones. I'm so glad that we found you. And that was such a powerful moment. And then the other song we wrote that same night, we are one under the African stars, under the African sun, under the African moon. We'll be free under the African stars, under the African. Okay, y'all got the point. So that was the beginning of this relationship. And not only did we realize that they thought we were lost, I realized we were lost. Because most of the people in America of African descent didn't even know they were African, didn't even acknowledge their Africanness. So that became our mutual task, was to use our mutual friendship and our common mission to let our children and future generations know what happened to the lost ones.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in on that one too a little bit, because when I was growing up, and I was in a really small town up right outside of Seattle, 3,500 people in the town. My family integrated the town. And when I was going through high school, I remember when we were learning U.S. history, and there was a little blip, a little few chapters about the Civil War, and then there was a little bit about slavery. And it was every time there was a mention of anybody that was of African descent, you were always a slave. And then after you were freed, you were the newly freed slaves. So you could never get rid of that term, no matter what, right? And so that was the framing for how you saw yourself. So you sort of grew, and not only how we saw ourselves, but how the other students in the classroom were already, incorporating that somehow these people are okay with having chains on their minds, having chains, dictate their lives from there. So yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that the level of the depth, it's like very surface what we learn, And so the fight to learn more, to be curious, to dispel the otherness, is part of what we have to take on now.
Well, we should learn something because now they want to take it all away.
And what they didn't even realize is the political movement because we weren't teaching it anyway. In Selma, the home of the civil rights, voting rights movement, there's not a single course in civil rights history, not even an elective in school.
First, it's just such a pleasure to be here with all of you. I feel like anytime I teach a course, it's all about who's in the room. That's what determines the success or the challenge of the message and the energy that circulates in here. So I would just want to say thank you for bringing me into community with these folks right here and for this beautiful gift, which I just feel it right here on my shoulders and it lightens me. Thank you. I'm the daughter of Hyman Johnson and Juanita Hernandez. My father grew up on the south side of Chicago in Princeton Park and lived his whole life in a 2-bedroom low-income housing project with his 3 sisters, my grandparents and their parents, and slept in the kitchen. He was the first in his family to go to college. My mother went to Northern Illinois University on a welfare scholarship, also from the south side of Chicago. She was Mexican, and all her aunts were half Black. So my mother grew up among Black people on the south side of Chicago. My parents met in college. My father, it's a long story about the drinking, but let me just tell you that his best friend was an exchange student from the University of Nairobi in 1969. And soon, as all Kenyans eventually do, they say, you should come to my house. You don't have to pay anything. Come stay with me. And you can stay with us for a year if you like. And my parents, being who they were, with incredible wanderlust and me, very young, said, why not? We got $23. Let's go. So that was 1973. They went to Kenya. And so I learned to speak in Kenya. My first schooling there, and then we returned to the United States and then eventually went back again. And so I spent some years there in middle school. I say this because so much of who I am is because of the time that I spent in Nairobi, in Mombasa, in Mathare Valley, in so many places where when I returned to the United States, that's when I felt like something in me had been cut off. And I didn't have the words for it. I wasn't yet a historian. I'm a cultural historian. I'm a professor at UCLA. And I didn't yet know even what I was interested in, but I knew interested in as far as a profession, but I knew that I wanted to make other people feel the way I felt, the home that I felt, but also the compassion, the spark, the life, the determination to find beauty, to find creativity in all kinds of history, the refusal of a past that was only about strife, but instead to look to the present, the future, and even the past, even when all of the stories that are told to us are those where we've been subjugated, to find instead the agency that we have in our creativity, in our songs, in our activism, in the way that we raise our children. And even for all of us who are not necessarily on front lines or in direct action, just the way that we show up to our fellow human beings, the way that we help someone out. My aunt tells the story, my father's sister, about how embarrassed she was. It was the time between 2 dances when she was a senior in high school, and there was no money to buy her another dress for the second dance. And she was upset because for all the reasons, all of the reasons that you already know. My grandfather was a bus driver and just didn't have the money. So she said, she decided that I'm just not gonna go because I can't show up in the same dress. And she said, 2 days before the dance, all the women, here they come. All the women, all the neighbors, they come, they took that dress apart and they put it back together for her. And she had a new dress. These are the stories, the unknown, the unsung, those that are meant to be silenced, the ones that we don't often celebrate because we're told they don't matter because they're not public enough. They didn't make the books. They didn't make history, but we do make history. We might not make the history books. We might not get taught these things anymore, our children, but we do make history in every single way. So I think about this as the legacy of what I now carry as the lightest load, the one that lifts me up, the inspiration every day that I get from all of the stories that have been told about the feminism, even when it's not called that, about the diaspora that lifted me up, that I didn't have words for, but that I felt a home in, that river, that current that goes around the world, and the folly of anti-Blackness, because we're everywhere. You can't be against the air or the water because we're here, we're never going anywhere. And just because people say that we disappeared, which is what folks say about Indigenous people everywhere, oh, they're gone, the disappearing Indian, the disappearing African, the language is gone. It's not gone. You just may not hear it. So I'm just so inspired and so deeply gratified to be here today with storytellers, with travelers, with folks who are putting dresses back together for each other, who are keeping those practices alive. And so thank you very much.
With that said, I would like to, which I usually start by saying, but I'd like to, in fact, acknowledge our ancestors and acknowledge the land and the beach that we're on of our Indigenous, our brothers and sisters, our Native and African Indigenous ancestors, and all of our relations. And it's important for us. If you don't know where you're from, you gotta ask somebody. First of all, does anyone have any questions about anything that we're talking about, or have something on top of mind that they'd be interested to learn just right now? Oh, please go right ahead.
We're with family, right? We're with family, right? Yes. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a certain amount of consciousness and love of people and African people. But let's face it, Carter G. Woodson talked about this over 100 years ago, that the worst problem that African people face around the diaspora is not the lynching of the neck, but the lynching of the mind. The lynching of the mind. And we are few among many who do not have any appreciation for Africa. I don't know about y'all, but when I was growing up, I was rooting for Tarzan. I was rooting against the Native Americans with what's the name? Tonto and the Menchkars. We have been brainwashed all of our lives. And one thing the civil rights movement did for us was to give us a certain amount of awakening, because we could open our eyes and see the colored only signs. We could see the racism and the white supremacy. But now those signs have been removed, but the white supremacy is just as blatant. And in fact, it's more dangerous now than it was. And that's why it's harder, not only to connect our people throughout the diaspora, but just to get them to accept what happened in America, what happened in Jamaica, what happened wherever you are. Because you are dealing with a generation now, they're no different from us. I hate people say, oh, this is the worst generation, they're no worse than we were. The problem is they're not. The issues have changed and yet they're the same. So until we deal with the reality of, there's two kinds of racism: rational racism and irrational racism. Rational racism, irrational racism. Irrational racism we're all familiar with, right? The Klan, the Proud Boys, these are irrational racists because they're so irrational. They think they can try to overthrow the government and get away with it. And guess what? They still might get away with it. But the rational racist is that person who would never pick up a lynch rope, would never use the N-word, but support institutionalized racism. They were for, against affirmative action. I went to Harvard. They were for limiting Black people's participation in Harvard and other universities, all in the name of justice, not understanding there's a difference between justice and equity. You can't deny people basic freedoms for 200 years and then say, okay, from now on, we're going to be fair. It's not fair. you might give people an equal opportunity now, but you had an unequal opportunity for over 200 years. So in order for there to be equity, you have to level the playing field, and you can't level the playing field by just being fair. So if we really want, I am hopeful because of people like in this room, but we're gonna have to do a reality check. We're gonna have to fight for the teaching of our history. One thing the Jews do that Black people did not do. Jews did not rely on public schools to teach their children about the Holocaust. But we are not teaching our children in church or anywhere. But I think that there's got to be some real effort with funders and churches to make sure we bring that history, the real history of what happened to African people, what happened to Native American people. Nobody wants to talk about genocide, but America committed genocide. And all the bad things that Trump ever said, one thing he said was true, almost true. When he said, wait a minute, one thing I'm gonna tell you, when he said, well, I don't know why y'all are so mad at the Russians and the Chinese, look at all the people America has killed, huh?
Say that
Let's
again.
take,
Say that again, I didn't get it. Just say it again.
okay, I talk too fast. Well, you know what happened with Iraq, all the people that we killed, all the Native American people, it was genocide, we killed, people took their land. So when America play high and mighty and say, oh, you're so bad, Russians, for what you're doing in Ukraine, yes, it's bad, but we have to acknowledge what was bad in this country, not to make people feel bad, but to make us feel better. Because at the expense of making them feel uncomfortable, our children are feeling bad. And all we want is the truth to be told, and then all of us can heal, but we cannot heal as long as the lies supersede the truth.
So, I mean, I think it's super, super important for us to speak the truth, speak what you're speaking. And maybe it's just me, but I have heard this over and over again. And I'm still wondering, like, well, what the fuck are we going to do about it? Excuse my language. So what I'm interested in really maybe unpacking, perhaps, are inspired ideas and thoughts from anyone here, because we're all experts. We all came to this day to be in community, to search with amongst each other. So, like, what do we do, right? I know that for me, I had to look in the mirror and say, how can I be of service with the skills that I have? But at least let me start with the skills that I know I have, because I know I have some skills that I don't know I have, but I don't know that yet. I learn more every day. So the skills that I have are really in culture, in art, and entertainment and storytelling, right? So I picked a lane, shall we say, but I still don't really know what happened. I mean, I've been wanting to talk about the genocide of Native Americans for the longest time. I don't know why everybody's so afraid to talk about it. It happened. What is it that folks are so afraid of? What is it? Because, and I know I'm sort of interrupting myself as I'm speaking, but the other thing too to me is that when I look at generational trauma, which I believe is very real, it's generational trauma for all of us, right? So when we think about white people, there's generational trauma for white people too. And part of that trauma is unconscious bias, which we all have, but part of that trauma is this sort of ingrained entitlement, perhaps. I'm trying to figure out how to engage deeper conversations around what we just don't know, what we don't walk around and know. How can we inquire even deeper of ourselves to have a better consciousness and idea? So I'm going to go out to the audience for a second because there's a couple of people. I know you want to say something right here, and then we'll go back to Sly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Mam Tukuleur Mbai, and I'm the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Senegal in Los Angeles. And what is it people are fearful about? I don't think it's about fear, it's about ignorance. And I think what my father always tells us, within our family, if you don't know who you are, go back to where you're from and dig down into who you are and who your resources, who is your resources. And I think that I've been here in the country for a long time. And my sister Jainable right there can be a witness, because we did our part. We did a lot. We were doing it since our kids were little, 25 years ago or plus. So we used to be at UCLA. She actually worked towards putting together African Americans and Africans and Senegalese. She actually co-wrote a Wolof dictionary, put it together for African Americans to be able to make sure language barrier doesn't exist between us. And also we did a lot. We head wrapped, we braided, we danced. I remember when the movie, the Lion King came out, they invited us to talk about what we contribute in this movie. And then we were there all over the place. So just to tell you that it's just about educating people. It's about reaching out to people, because that's the unknown that makes people fearful. If you don't know, you're just fearful. It's like a taboo. You don't talk about it. And if you don't, you keep deep down sinking into your ignorance. And then you become more fearful all of the place. I tell you this by experience, because from my duties as being an international honorary consul, I've seen it all. I've actually connected the world, Americans to Africans, belong to several different organizations. African Focus Inc. is actually inducting African Americans to their countries, different parts of Africa. And we always open our arms and teach them and tell them, this is what you do, this is where you want to go to, your roots. And I think it's just like, it doesn't even matter whether you're African or not. People just need to be educated. People just need to be held hands, and then just make sure you tell them, this is not what you think. And I think that's what we always need to do. And I really appreciate this, because as an honorary consul also, I have a lot of refugees coming on a daily basis here. So people don't understand, why are these people coming and just bothering us in this country? They don't know why they're fleeing from their countries. And then with open arms and trying to teach people, you see that they understand now better the reason why the world is apart. We need to expand the walls and we need to get closer. Thank you so much.
Please come up. Yeah, but while he's coming up, I just want to talk about a little bit when they say, why are these people coming here to bother us? Well, hello, if they actually knew their history, they would know that they came here and they bothered them, so to speak, shall we say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. First, I want to say thank you so much for having me. Marcia, Council Chairman, both beautiful women I've known for a long time. And thank you so much, and for giving me this opportunity. I'm a little bit hoarse. My name is John Sly Wilson. The Sly means I'm from the group Sly, so you can look at them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, R&B Hall of Fame, Motown Hall of Fame. I did 145 voice choir for Peace. If you type in John Sly Wilson on YouTube, you'll see me directing the artists from all over the world, some of the top artists. I have been on the quest for over 50 years. I'm one of the very few people, I guess, in this room. I don't know. I looked Martin Luther King straight in the face, talked to him when he was alive, when he came to my hometown. Also Malcolm X. When I I've been to Gaborone, Botswana, the state of Lesotho, Johannesburg, Lusaka, Zambia. When I was in Lusaka, Zambia, a brother came to me, his name was Tabo. And when I got off the plane, he says, "Where are you from, brother?" Oh, I said, "I'm from Los Angeles." He said, "No, brother, where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm from United States." "No, brother, where are you from?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Welcome home after 400 years. What was said earlier is that through music, there's healing. And I've been able to try to do in my small way, heal the world. But what we need is knowledge. The knowledge that is missing. I am, and please listen to what I say, I am an African-American from Africa, but also I'm a Muskogee Creek Freedman Choctaw. Does anybody understand what I just said?
Yes.
I saw somebody shake their head. I'm going to say the first part. I'm a Muskogee Creek Freedman. My great-grandmother was a Muskogee Creek Freedman. That means that she was a slave that was adopted by the Creek Nation. That is one of the stories that has not been told, because the Native Americans also enslaved us. I am living proof of that. Then she married a Choctaw Indian on the reservation and had my grandfather in 1889 in the Indian Territory. Oklahoma did not become a state until 1903. They don't talk about that. Also, my mother, when my grandmother was 6 months pregnant with my mother, they were part of the Tulsa Massacre. And my grandfather had to get his wife, who was pregnant with my mother, and they made it from Tulsa, Oklahoma, as far as El Dorado, Kansas, and that's where my mother was born. So these are the stories that are missing, that are not being told. But our best ally is the internet, because people are starting to post this information, not only with stories, but with pictures, and saying this is what really happened. Even more than Roots. For example, you see, when you watched Roots, they never mentioned Florida. Why? It's because as they say, the 5 civilized tribes, the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, the Seminoles, and the Cherokee. The Seminoles said, "We're not having this now." But they don't teach you that. Okay? That's why they leave Florida out of the Civil War. So this is the history that needs to be taught in the school. And if they're going to do this, what is it, critical education, race, let them go ahead. You know why? It's because you know how we were when we were kids. As soon as we walk out of that door, we're going to open that computer in our hand, which is a cell phone, and start looking up on YouTube and internet the real truth. So yeah, let them teach it, because when we get outside, this is what we're going to learn. Thank you very much for your time.
I gotta tell him this, we've had so much in common. We lived in the same place in Alabama. And guess what? Tulsa, I was one of the first lawyers to file that lawsuit against Tulsa race riots with Johnny Cochran. Long before the first one, we had something else in common. Thank you. Well, I don't want to talk too much, but one of the events, I'm an elder. I know I'm probably one of the oldest people. One of the events that we give, that Puma and people from Senegal and Mali start coming to, was the Bridge Crossing Jubilee. I gave you one of those cards. And what's unique about that event, I'm told, I know Dick Gregory before he died, because he used to come almost every year, and we honored her father one year. But it was the only event, I am told, the only event in America where people across all cultural lines and political lines showed up. Everybody from the Black Panther Party to we have the Buddhists to come. It's the only place where you have the civil rights movement and the Pan-Africanists, where we talk about everything from reparations to environmental justice. And that's what the beauty of the Bridge Crossing Jubilee. And that's one thing that Puma is trying to do, not just with the Jubilee, but to connect people to these events that are cross-cultural and Pan-Africanites all over the world. So I'm not just asking you to come to Selma, but I'm gonna send a delegation to Jamaica, to Brazil, Kenya. That is one way. And sister, to add to what you said, as long as one person has hope, I think India reset, as long as one person has hope, there's hope. And what people forget, and I saw a picture of Amelia Boynton in this place. Amelia Boynton came to Selma in the 30s, along with a man, I know his name, C.J. Adams. They came up almost before Dr. King was born, planting the seeds of the movement. It took another, 30 years for it to harvest. So we can't get discouraged because of the limited number of people in the room. Another organization I found was 21st Century Youth Leaders. And one thing we did in that organization, y'all may have heard of it, what made it popular was Tarana Burke, but that's another story. And the founder of, not just Me Too, Black Voters Matters. But we talk about the famous people who came out of 21st century, but what really made 21st century effective is ordinary young boys and girls who, instead of turning to drugs, they turn to hugs. I lost my baby sister a few months ago, and some of the people that came forward, I didn't even know. They said, Miss Sanders, I was in 21st century. You took me to that museum in Birmingham. I didn't know about the 4 little girls. I said, you didn't know about the 4? I didn't know until you took me. Those children will never be lawyers and never be doctors, but they have knowledge and they're passing on that knowledge to their children. That's how we do it. One person at a time, telling one story at a time. That's how we do it, because as long as one person is left telling that story, there's hope.
No, I was just going to echo that I do think a lot of it, it's knowledge, but it's also sort of like flipping knowledge to curiosity, or flipping our fears into curiosity. So moving from being afraid to being curious. And I think that's where the power of storytelling comes in. Every single person here has talked about a story, because it breaks down the barriers, it lets people's hearts open. I was talking to my son this morning as an example, and we do this thing, we meditate most mornings, wherever he is, he'll call me, we'll do a little meditation together and then get on with our day. And there was noise in the background. I'm like, what is that noise I'm hearing? He's in Atlanta right now, and we're picking up some speakers. He goes, oh, I'm listening to James Brown, watching James Brown get on up right now. And I said, and when he's a performer too, and when he opens his act, he always says a little James Brown. And he said, yeah, I goes, it's hard to tell you what kind of mood I'm in. I've watched it twice in the last 24 hours. He said, I needed to hear the stories. I needed to remember that what he's been doing and what he did and what he went through, he's opened all these doors, and I can definitely do what I need to do right now, you know? And it was just like, I'm like, I'm going to use that because it is so true. And so if we can figure out how to get those, do it in a way that does use story, but I know that that fear, because when you know, then the question becomes, so now what do I do, right? And I think there's a tendency to believe that people don't care because they don't know what to do. And I don't think that's really what it is. And I think what we now need to do is, so like, what are the things that you can do? And Kathy and I are always going back and forth with this, because she wants people to get up off their backsides and go do something. That's her language. And I'm like, I just think they need to be, and we like practice changing our minds, like changing the way we think every time something comes through that is something that causes us fear or anxiety or not enoughness or whatever the things are that are our own demons. So we can start right there, I think, by changing our minds and changing the way we think about the things that corporate media is, selling us every day. I think that's another piece of it. Anyway, stories, telling stories, consuming stories, sharing stories. I think that's the key to unlocking a lot of the fear.
Wait, no, I got to say this right quick. I'm talking too much, but I'm gonna say. I teach children through music and theater. That's the best way. You can't lose them. I gave another 21st century camp, and the people say, "Oh, no, give a camp those kids so they can pay attention." But we bring the music in. So the song I wrote real quick. Who will tell the story? Who will tell it right? Who will tell the story and bring the truth to light? So you sing that song, say what you're talking about. What's the truth? You get them to talk, and then you get them to write their own songs about their own stories.
We'll actually be doing that tomorrow, by the way. And so I'm going to just take this moment just to say that tomorrow from noon to 5:30, we'll be convening at what used to be the Underground Museum for a day of health and wellness self-care. We'll have about half-hour blocks of time where we'll have different practitioners share what they facilitate in their lives. We'll be covering areas of trauma, death, physical health and well-being. There'll be dancing and drumming, and there'll be food, and this will be a really amazing day because so often we do this, but we never in community actually share our practices with one another and offer ways in which that we can take some of those practices home with us in self-care. So tomorrow we'll be doing that. You're all welcome to join. It's a free event at the what used to be known as the Underground Museum. It's on West Washington Boulevard, just east of Crenshaw, on the south side of the street. And the address we'll have later. Go ahead.
I'm not clear about a couple of things, and then I also want to make a comment.
Please.
No, it's okay. So, well, the first thing is that, you know, I spent my life like sharing stories about the African diaspora, et cetera. And I don't understand what the goal is. I mean, why are we, I mean, we all know these stories, or there's stories we don't know. Like, for instance, my comment in between my question is the fact I'm very upset that we always concentrate everything in terms of the United States and Africa when there's so many suffering Black people in Mexico, in Argentina, where they have to have a passport to even get to Buenos Aires, and around the world there are people that, because the overall theme is the fictitious concept of superiority and inferiority, which is why they were able to get away with slavery, by making people feel they were inferior. And the problems that we have now is that when they sing that they're not, that the inferior are really superior, they're freaking out, and they've got to stop you. You know, when Obama became president, they voted for him, and then they realized, oh my God, he's better than me. But we got to get rid of these Black people now, because so it's all of this stuff means nothing if we don't do something about it. Like, so when we talk about communication and sharing stories, we have to talk about how this has been affected around the world. I mean, there are pockets of people around the world that are Black, that are living in white countries, or let us say multiracial countries, that are being treated as slaves, and nobody talks about it. I mean, people are shocked when I tell them what's really going on in Argentina. They don't even know that. And they don't even know, I mean, the huge population of Blacks in Mexico. And I forgot what I was going to say, but anyway,
That's good. Teresa, do you want to
I
comment?
guess it's the doing, like, what can we do?
Well, okay, I'm gonna let Kumba, I also would love to hear from Teresa. I think part of the doing has been talked about quite a bit. I think there is for me, because I feel your passion about it, I feel sort of the same way, like, when is whatever we're all doing gonna hit some crazy zeitgeist that then everybody's going to be doing it, and everything's going to shift, and we're all going to be one big happy fucking family. Excuse my language, I'm from New York. But with that said, I mean, what is coming to me from like listening to everyone in terms of story and where I'm, telling you where I'm from, telling you who taught me, or what the boundary was of my early childhood learning. I think part of the solution is for us to continue to tell each other our stories and who we are and where we're from, so that within that, we see our commonality, we see how we connect with each other, we see how, like when he was talking about, where he was from, you were like, oh, well, I was there and I did. So we find connection, and we find even in people's trauma and people's pain, we find a home in that, in a way, because we can share ours and we see where we connect. And I think that is part of the solution. We have to continue to, like, for instance, 2 days ago, 15 hours ago, 6 hours ago, we were not in community together. And here we are. So I think part of what needs to happen too is the responsibility is on all of us. What are you going to talk about when you leave this room with someone else who wasn't here to say what you discovered, what you learned, what touched you, what was inspiring, what wasn't talked about today? What more do we need to explore? So I think that's part of the solution.
I want to thank you for bringing up this problem sometimes that we have about just juxtaposing Africa and the United States, because there are so many places. I just came back from Veracruz about 3 weeks ago. And, you know, this is the home of Yanga, and like the longest running slave rebellion in the Western Hemisphere was by Black people in Mexico. So the towns that were established, the Maranash communities that make us as historians rethink the term runaway because it's so pedantic. We think of these folks as fugitives, as rebels, as folks who created whole systems of knowledge and things to pass down that talk about trying to change our generational trauma into a sort of intergenerational rebellious DNA around always resisting, whatever that means. I feel like these stories are so important to source from outside the United States and not to recenter. So I appreciate you bringing that up so much. I feel like all of us, well, let me say, I'll speak for myself, that a lot of times what becomes stressful is the idea that we have to come up with something new. Because I think that one of the things that's very difficult for us is to credit the history that we have, the experience that we have, the expertise that we have, that may not be degreed or between, you know, bookbinders, or but in fact is situational knowledge that is so deep and so wise and so important. And we all tell our stories in such different ways. Some people paint them, some people tell them, some people, you know, sing them, you dance them. And all of these things are important for us to get really present in. I think this is one of the difficulties with the last 15 years, perhaps, is that it's increasingly hard to stay present. And this is like a weapon, right? It's been weaponized against us, right? Is that we're so distracted and we're so put off center. Yeah, exactly. Yes, and all of this overstimulation and our nervous systems are so off that we learn to doubt our intuition. And this is like the first weapon of any abusive culture or person, is to get you to doubt yourself. And so when you think that you don't have the answer, then you start looking for home somewhere else, right? But home is always inside of you. You can always come home to yourself. And I think that's the power of knowing the stories that we have, because it made me think of Septima Poinsett Clark and the ways that she was doing this work, that the Highlander School was doing this work quietly in many respects, but that by the time Rosa Parks sits down, and not because she's just tired, but because she knew Emmett Till had been lynched, and she was a student of Septima Poinsett Clark years before that, but also, and Claudette Colvin, and had done the same thing 11 years before, but it wasn't the time yet. Wasn't the time yet. And there was many women before that. And there were many women beside and behind Rosa Parks. And there were so many, and this is why we needed Martin Luther King, because he was the spokesperson. Let's remember, he was very young at the time, but he was the right spokesperson, chosen with care. It wasn't a sort of random appointment or somebody who just showed up on the scene. It was just like Brown v. Board. It's like there were several test cases before this, trying to find the right people. And all of those fumbles that folks made around who was deserving of integration and who was the model minority, and all of those kinds of stumbles are part of the beloved community, which, again, coming back to this presence, the importance of presence, this starts here, right here. And I think it can't be overlooked as one of the most important, most fundamental places to begin. Because if people don't have a sort of presence of mind and a confidence in their own stories, then they're gonna doubt their own intuitions. They're gonna think that this doesn't, that in fact there's some kind of utopian destination where we're supposed to land, when in fact this is liberation right here. Is how we live it together every day, and how we make it, no matter what, out of whatever, we make liberation through our food, through our kindnesses to one another. So I want to lift up also just the present moment as a place of liberation, not as a perfect place, and which is another capitalist lie, I think, but as a place of great difficulty and beauty and bitterness and creativity and hope and all of these things that are so human that are okay to lean into, that actually are the answer, and not the problem.
Thank you so much. Yeah, come on in. And I just wanted to say something right after that, but come close. Thank you so much for this answer, because it's really, helped me. I also came with the questions, and that's what I was asking earlier. What do we do? What do we do with what we know, what we have, what we're capable of? What can we do? The truth is that we've been doing. I mean, anybody here, anybody who wakes up here can tell us about what they've been doing. The Consul General has been sharing what they've been doing for the past 23 years, just sharing, teaching, fire. I mean, this is the Jubilee is only one piece of some of the things that she's initiated and that she's been doing. We grew up, I'm from, Senegal, Mali, but we grew up politically in the movements that she built. She taught us through those songs. And, you can name many organizations, movement, museum, things that she created that are still, some of them stopped, some of them keep going on. But what we know is that, yes, injustice is old, but resistance is as old. Every time, everywhere, people are pushed down, things are happening, there is always some people who will figure out a way to change the situation and to do something. And today, as we speak, there are people doing things in all kinds of fields. And really, my quest is, how do we connect to these things? How do we make sure that people know that fire is there? How do we make sure that people know what are people doing in Mexico, in Brazil, in Kenya? But I'm looking for what people are doing, because I know everywhere somebody somewhere is doing something. And I'm looking for those people. I'm looking for them. And I want them today, because it's possible that somebody created this platform, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. We need our own Black link, where everyone who's doing something that is pushing us forward, that is stopping the wrong things that are happening to us, can find a way to put it, to show it, and so that when you wake up in the morning and want to do something, to go somewhere, you know that we are here. Like, who knows that we are here today? And I want us to know about each other. And the only way to do it is to find each other. I mean, to make the steps to go and find people. And of course, now we have the skills, the young people, we have everything possible to connect with each other. To me, that's about some of the things that we do, is to reach out to each other. And also, when people talk about stories, to me, stories are not just stories. Because, at least from what I feel or from my own intuition, change happens when we witness together the real story. Because people can hide things, people can say this, but when we're all here and we all face it, it's so hard to turn your head around. Because as long as it's us, between us telling the story, yes, somebody can discard it, but it comes a time when a story gets to a certain level, when we all listen, witness to it at the same time, it becomes the truth.
and it is accepted as such. And it is our work to bring out those stories that are pushed down, forgotten, not spoken about. You know, the Amelia Boynton, to bring it to a level where now people are forced to recognize it as the story. And that is to really part of our work.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so like everyone else, I'm going to start by thanking all of you because this is such an amazing experience. And thank you, Genevieve, because I tried to stay home and watch the tennis match. I tried to stay at work, go golf, but this is better. I just want to say I'm Dr. Kelly Peterson, and I do corporate development work. I work in a totally different context than many of you. I've been doing this work for 25 years. And in the last 5 years, and certainly since the murder of George Floyd, you know, the whole DEI work has jumped up. And I do that work. I don't call it DEI, I call it AID. And AID is my acronym. It's advancing accessibility, inclusion, diversity through equity. That's the work I do. And I work with Fortune 100 companies. I work with the companies that are creating and causing the most damage on the planet, I mean, quite frankly, and in our communities. And I made a conscious decision a long time ago to work in that context because I felt that if the human beings kept leaving, how are we going to make an impact? So I think what my grandmother used to say is that we have to be everywhere, and everywhere we are, there we are. And so I think the other thing that's important, like presence is important, intentionality is critical. Like when I go into the work, I go into the work with a clear intention. And my intention when I'm doing that aid work, I don't call it DEI. You mix those letters up, they say die. I don't think that's benefiting anyone. And I say that, but when I go into that work, I'm very clear that I'm there to reconnect people to their humanity. So when I go into the Walt Disney Company, and which is where one of my clients, I go in there with a clear understanding that I'm there to remind these people that they're human beings. And the reason why when you talk about this trauma that white people experience is because they're disconnected from who they are. And so when I do the aid work, one of the first things I say that everybody must do is they have to explore their history. And I encourage them to do DNA tests, talk to your grandparents, go back, you know, find your story, right? And one of the common things I'll get from white folks is, well, I'm just a plain old white person. And I'm like, what the hell is a plain old white person? Your people come from somewhere and you're disconnected from that. You don't know, you think you're from Ohio, but you're not from Ohio. That's not where you're from. You're disconnected. So I think it's really important that we remember that the work has to be for everyone. It can't just be for us. Because if it's just us, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. You know, we're on a planet with human beings. So I think it's just important that what I'm hearing is that everywhere people are, they're doing their work. The opportunity is, can we be more in line in that intentionality, right? And with intention. And I think like creating some clear language around what that is, where we're kind of moving in a rhythm together. And I think we are, you know, people of consciousness, but I think it's not good enough. I want to know that we are. That's really what you're saying. And the last thing I want to say is there should be young people here. You know, I'm finding that I'm in a lot of spaces where a lot of amazing conversations are happening, and there are no young people. I saw there's young brothers there. I know they're young people. Hey, I'm 62, young people. So, but that's just all I want to say. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Except from a young person.
He ain't that young, but you know, it don't cry. What can I say? It don't cry. Actually, I'd like to invite this young fella to talk a little bit about what he does do. Come on. This is Mason Buchanan. Welcome.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Thank you. How you all doing?
Good.
Yeah, so,
Kids out there.
I'll take that. Thank you. So, this has been a real treat for me to be here just to listen because I want to be honest, probably within these last 3 to 4 years, I've been really just diving in and trying to educate myself, right? And so just on that last question that was asked, and I'll get to what I do in a little bit, but you all been talking about some very needed and heavy points. And so how do we get young people involved, right? How do we make it make sense to them? Because as I can recall growing up during the crack era in the 90s in Gary, Indiana, my family back here from Chicago, we were just thinking about survival. And it wasn't anything else that was more important than paying our bills, getting something to eat, wearing the latest clothes that everybody wear, buying a car. A lot of our parents, correct, a lot of our parents was on drugs, and so our generation was interesting on, making moves and trying to do things. Me, myself, I have a nonprofit called DMTL, Dolores, Marcel, Tyree, and Larry. Those are my brothers and my mother that I lost to gun violence in 2002 in Gary, Indiana. Yes. And so my whole purpose in life was to become successful and take care of my mom. That was like my vision in life. After that happened, I was lost.
Yeah.
Right. But on the outside, you can tell because when you grew up in the hood, you learn how to wear a shield so people can't deflect what's going on because the weak get preyed upon. And so once I had to figure out my new purpose in life, and I had to ask, the higher up, what is it? And then I had to ask myself, what makes me happy? And so I came to a point where I say, I want to help people who are less fortunate to me. And so that I moved to California. It's a whole journey within itself. And getting connected and, doing work in South LA for the past 15 years, working with the gang reduction, youth development, working in public safety in the mayor's office, working in the office of reentry in the mayor's office. And I had no experience. I just had a passion to do something to remember my family's names by. So I've been able to go on probation camp to talk to young people. I've been able to work with a lot of the schools in South Los Angeles and travel the country. I've been to different places as well as Kingston and Rio de Janeiro, working on this. But it's like, how can we, you all make some real good points. What can we do? And it's really simple. It's like treat people like humans. Like it's really simple, right? Treat them how you want your mother or your kids to be treated. But it's like, I do work in health equity as well. And so the health equity is the piece that I'm gonna try to connect with the young people to make them understand racism, the different things as far as in our living environment, crime, it all connects to health equity. And so I almost gave up during the pandemic. I'm gonna be honest with you. I felt just over. Every time I see a black man die on the TV, I can't do anything for a week. It just takes something out of it. And so I almost felt like, what am I doing this for? And so I had to realize I can reach those in my range and try to make a difference with them and hopefully that they do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like multi-generational mentorship, right? And so I got older brothers that pouring into me. I'm doing the same thing, and we doing the same thing. But I'll end it with this real quick. I think one of the solutions can be possibly some of these charter schools that's being open, right? Where you can kind of control the curriculum to some degree, right? Because I also worked in and I'm not an advocate on charter schools, but at the same time, I'm trying to think of a way. How can we open our schools? And so if it's not a charter school, let's take that off the table. But how can we open up our schools and how can we learn and educate our youth? Because within these last 2 or 3 years, I've been learning so much on the internet. It's crazy. and I get mad, I get pissed off the more and more I learn. And it's like, it's so much. And everything y'all are saying, I'm like, yeah, I know that. I learned that. And so again, these spaces are phenomenal. You know, I'm thankful for Sankofa organization for holding this space. I'm sorry I was late, but I was really meaning to get here and join in. And I'm glad I can share a little bit. Thank you.
Very quickly, what my sister was just talking about, telling the story. That's the way. In Senegal, as you know, the griots used to get together everybody under the Palabaka, around the fire, and tell the story. And that kept going. That's where even the people who left Africa came to the US, brought those stories with them, and they were living it, and they were telling their families like that. So it's just like telling the story. And a friend of mine actually was at UCLA doing research about the griots. And then she found a way that rap music is actually inspired by the griots, what they were used to say. But unfortunately, it's becoming like something violent and something that's not there, bringing other things that they were talking about. But if they only could listen, if they only could know how powerful those were, telling the story and the history and telling people that it's okay, you are from a good background. So it's gonna keep going and it's gonna keep being viral. And that's what I want to say.
As he comes up, I want to make a point with the last brother. I'm telling you, that has not changed. Many of our people are still in survival mode. Selma is well known, and Houston was one of the poorest cities per capita in America. We have all these famous people that come there, including Clinton, Obama's, Oprah Winfrey. Nothing is left in Selma. And the other point I want to make that you raised, I gave a camp along with some other people about 2 months ago. I wanted to revive 21st Century that had died. And I wrote a song, y'all, 50 years ago called I Love My Black Man. Okay, so I'm teaching the kids, I love my black man. I'm gonna stand by my black man. And some of the kids weren't singing. Oh, I said, well, something is wrong. So I believe in stopping. I'm not gonna impose this song on you. Oh, why aren't you singing? Well, Miss Sanders, what if we don't love a man? What if the person I love is not a man? I never thought about that. And I quickly stopped singing that song and began listening. The point is, as I said earlier, these children are no worse than my generation or yours, but the language is different, the technology is different, and we have to listen. So we had a whole session on listening to them. What is it that moves you and what is it that bores you? Because if we're gonna reach them, we gotta reach them through their language and through their priorities. And one of the young women, she's teaching and the little girl came in dancing every day and she punished her. I said, why are you punishing the child? She's expressing her language. She's expressing who she is. I said, instead of punishing her, I said, baby, you know what? Now, when you learn this math, we're going to dance. So we got to learn how to reach the children where they are and not impose our values. So thank you for bringing up that point, because it's still survival mode for many of our people. Most of us are not living on the ocean or even living in a decent home in many communities.
Well, I just wanted to say that the griots of today include some of the rappers are the griots of today, because they also express the stories of where they are in their roots, in their communities, and the violence, and the guns, and the drugs. Yeah. And the tradition of the griot went to the Caribbean, went from Haiti, and we had our own way of storytelling, so it's translated in every culture, and indigenous cultures as well. They've done that, the Native Americans for generations. So.
I wanted to comment to the brother and first to the sister. I am from Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, originally, but to the young brother, and I'm not afraid to tell my age because it's common knowledge anyway. I'll be 74 years old this year. Okay. And but I want to apologize to you. It's because it's my generation who let you down. It's my generation. Okay. And to validate that, if you watched CNN last week, They had Martin Luther King's granddaughter on there. And she looked at her mother and father and said, it's your generation who let me down. It's because we did not pass on the struggles. For example, I had two things I had to do when I turned 18 years old here in America. I either had to go to school or I had to go to Vietnam, either or. Okay. And when I was eligible to go to Vietnam, 18 years old in 1968, the voting age was 21. But we said, if we are able to go to a country that we didn't know nothing about, we had no choice, or we go to jail, then we have to turn the voting age back to 18. That's why you can vote now at 18.
So that was your generation that did that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's give it up for that.
Absolutely.
I mean, thank you for your comment. There's something that seems to be permeating for me, which is that because I think I disagree a little bit, or I don't disagree. What I believe is that I have a different reality, which is that your generation, which I'm inching up, catching up behind you, to actually left a great deal of wisdom and roadmaps for a lot of us. I think there's a lot of us and a lot in your generation that did not have the capacity or the knowledge to do that. But I am a little hard pressed to not blame. We're not a monolith of generations. I mean, there's many, and I feel from some of what you were saying too, that I think the more we're in, well, we are all over the place. So the more that we are all over the place, that we can have impact in all those different places. And I think we do. I think that if you're going to blame a generation for not doing something, I feel like you can just as much blame the younger generation for not choosing on their own to figure it out. Because when I look at the civil rights movement, when I look at other movements from other cultures, many of it was led by, figured out by young people. And so the idea of I didn't pass the baton, right? I dropped the ball. I mean, there is something to be said for the person who's catching the baton and catching the ball. But I think that it is also kind of like, it's like rap. And I point to you because we had that connection together. But, there's 50 Cent, and then there's Tupac, and then there's all these different kinds of messages. And I feel like, there's, when you Public Enemy, Public Enemy is like, you could have a whole course on Public Enemy and their music and their lyrics, if that wasn't a roadmap, I don't know what was. So I'm just saying all those things to say that how we get access, how we create opportunity for folks to learn of what your generation actually has done, left us. I mean, I know Teresa wants to say something about this. No?
Well,
No?
I wanted to comment. Okay. I am one of the very few to have one foot in my generation and one foot in his. You just said that you love rap and rapper. Well, J. Cole sampled one of my songs. I have a $1 million seller song on him, 73 years old. My point is the music that I originally written did on Soul Train in 1973, he put different lyrics to that, and it is not positive lyrics. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I hear you.
my point to you is that, well, I can't even repeat the language that goes all of that. You see, and when, for example, when you talk about rap and everything, rap is more than 50 years old.
Yes.
Okay.
Facts.
I mean, much more.
Facts.
Right.
Mhm.
And if we want to stay here in America, then let's go to 1941. You can't get that no more, Louis Jordan. I'm a historian.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm saying. So when I talk saying that we dropped the ball, I did not, as what I'm saying as a whole, we did not tell our children and now some grandchildren about the struggles, about, as I said earlier, I talked to Martin Luther King. These are people that I had conversations with. Okay, the people who died before us, that they don't talk about, Medgar Evers and Ralph Abernathy. See, this is what I'm saying is that we kind of dropped the ball. And this is, for example, one more thing I want to say, and I'm done. Yeah, but it's not mainstream. Okay, for example, one thing, and I'm done. When I was talking about the Native Americans, which, you know, I'm part, I lobbied a lot in the House of Representatives on artist rights about 5 or 6 times. Okay, and in the Cherokee Nation, they had their first woman chief, and her name was Wilma Mankiller. Absolutely, and and what happened was, while we were in the House of Representatives, one of the African American, as they call us, maroons. That's what they call us, because black and red makes maroon. That's the name they call us. And the brother said, "What are you going to do about the maroons on the 5 civilized tribes?" She said, "I don't want to be bothered with it. I'm not going to talk about it, because there's also reparations there." So these are the things that need to be discussed. And like I said to the brother, you know, the internet, YouTube is the best thing that's happening, because you can't hide it there. I'm sorry.
Very.
Oh, okay. I was really struck, actually, your comment about technology and presence, and how presence is so absolutely necessary. And technology, I've been thinking a lot about technology. So I'm Shari and Freelo, and I work for Sundance. And I do 2 things at Sundance. I program the films, and I also curate a section called New Frontier. In fact, I founded it. And it was to bring interdisciplinary practice into the festival, bringing film, art, and new media technology. I've been doing this since 2007. And so I've been in the company of technologists, creative technologists, for quite a while now. I was there, that started in 2007 when Netflix started to mail their CDs and Facebook started going. So I don't want to go on too long in terms of the examples, but I do believe today we have a design issue with our technology. The technology is actually designed to split us apart, and we have to stay together. And I've been working on, well, let's say COVID actually had a silver lining in my practice, because I had been working with so many creative technologists that I turned to them to figure out. So one of the things that I do with New Frontier is I present a cutting edge, like immersive platform, really hard work to present. And then I had to do it from my house, right? So I turned to other creative technologists in my community to build what we call the spaceship. It is a WebXR website that you can jump on your computer or on your VR headset and come together to see work. And it held this is a spaceship that was designed to, fly over the Earth right next to the International Space Station, so you can always see it. There was a lounge where, if anybody ever played Fortnite, you were an avatar that looked like Fortnite, ran around. In the lounge, when we came to each other, you accepted a conversation, then your webcam came on and you had an analog conversation. There's a very different kind of conversation than avatar conversation, because it was you, it was your face. So, and then there was a cinema house that brought everybody together. So I've been working on this to gather the artists
it was actually a phenomenal success. And so solved a lot of the problems that we were having in terms of XR because it was hard to get people to see it. But we quadrupled the output and brought people together in a space that is generally designed to split us apart. So I guess I'm saying all of this because it's occurring to me that there might be a place for the spaceship here too.
Yes, I need that space. That's why I came here.
Because we're trying to like augment the design because we did it just to bring people together. And we realized that, one of the issues that I have, I think, with the design on the landscape now is that digital platforms want to take your attention and just keep it in the digital space and away from each other. But we can design something totally different. So we've been thinking, yes, but we have to stay together. That's the only way we're gonna get through this. We have to stay together. So why not have the spaceship who can, bring people together internationally, but then, design the spaceship as an experience that travels and falls down on the ground and does something on the ground like this, and you have a little spaceship there and, so.
Or stop Selma.
Stop Selma. I guess I just want to put that out there, and I'm kind of taking a risk here because
Listen, I'm getting my,
No, seriously.
I went to school, I'm getting my master's.
I'm following right.
In VR, XR, AI, metaverse, and so, I think, and part of the reason, aside from some of the actual programs that I'm doing it for within my own organization, I also want to ensure that, we're in the space so that we can build and connect and dream and figure out moving forward, not only so that we can connect on a spaceship together to do things like this, but also to engage young people. I mean, I'm obviously the oldest in my class. And, but the good news is like, we're all lost in the learning part. So I don't feel so terribly bad because I'm like, is it just me that I can't get into that Roblox thing? I mean, Roblox is killing me. It's like Roblox was designed for a 13-year-old and I'm 62. So anyway, point being, I think that you bring up a very important point around technology and how it can be and will be and already is in many cases a solution, but also agree with you in the sense as I've been now in a lot of different programs and spaces and apps, it really is built to divide because the people who are building the programs are predominantly white males and they don't have a clue about us or anything else. And what they do have a clue about is not necessarily the truth. So there is space and place for us to be included. Thank you for making that comment.
Thank you so much. I
yeah.
have to say something. To work on it.
I've already done it. I've done it so I did this in, we built it in 2020 to host the festival in 2021. And we're shocked at how well it did. And so we built it again for 2022. But COVID had really kind of taken its toll on us. And I would like to do it again. It requires funds, but yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Sherry. I'll call you.
Yes, we will be calling her.
But she already said that she thinks that it's necessary or that it could possibly be a space where the spaceship could be a stop on the journey.
She wants her to say yes.
No, it makes, I'm just sitting here watching myself writing a program for the spaceship for this community, like for like.
Yes,
our
yes,
community.
yes.
Because the first one,
Where there's a place, it's an open space, but it's one where you can put things in, take things out, but people who go to it are going and benefiting and learning about each other.
Yes, so what I've been thinking about right now, I'm totally going out there, so like, how about a code of silence and like, some trust? Yes, some trust.
Can I see some hands? Hands up,
Some trust.
hands up, code of silence, hands up.
Because one of the things that I've been really thinking about in this environment of everybody's on strikes, the writers are on strike, the actors are on strike, labor's on strike. We've got big tech driving a booming economy. That does not add up. There's a huge, there's just a huge window there that is begging for a redesign, a new design. And so, I'm going and talking to documentary filmmakers and they're having a hard time. They're nervous about who's going to see my movie because no one, Netflix, these tech companies that people think are movie companies, but they're just tech companies, are not buying these movies. So I thought, well, what if we flew the spaceship, right? And made all the portals, because the way the spaceship works is that it's a platform, right? That has different portals that the artist's website plugs into. So as soon as you say, yes, I want to see, on the portal, you go to the artist side of the platform. So what if we did like a 5-day event and then kept the spaceship up there for 3 months and let the artists put their own paywalls and then we support, that type of thing, I just feel like there's a lot of things that we can do.
Please tell
Just
us your
redesign.
name again.
Yes.
Say your name again, please.
Sorry.
Sorry, Freelo. Don't do it. Let me get it.
F-R-I-L-O-T. F-R-I-L-O-T.
No, just thank you so much. Yep. Thank you so much. Yes, please. No, it's so beautiful because yes, I came here for this. No, really.
A present for you two. A present for you two.
Literally came here for this, but like, Marcia is saying, we create real spaces. This is not the only spaces we always figure out, we do the Invisible Giant celebration. We do different things where we can feel the emotion and we can get the learning going and we get the exchanges. And yes, as a mother, we've been talking about this. My children are right there playing Roblox. Oh, and they know everything that I don't know. And I get seriously upset about it because sometimes they speak Korean and I'm just like, why? But there's something I know is that if we can figure out a way where we create the platform that actually serve them and serve us, where we can get connected with each other when we want, and when we find each other, we can actually come down that spaceship and get and touch each other and figure out what needs to be done. There's going to be a different world. There's going to be a different world, and it's possible. It's possible with all of the information, all of the stories that everybody knows. If we have the technology and we have the ways of telling the stories that actually will make it attractive enough for our people, our young people to be with us, our job is done.
Agreed.
So hope everybody is doing well today. So initially I wasn't.
Who are you?
Oh, my name is Kadir Houston. I'm actually a friend of Nason, him and my brother. They actually went to college together. I wasn't expecting to speak today. I'm an accountant, so I'm better with numbers than words. But yeah. So thank you. So my parents, similar to Nason, used to always come over my house. So my parents, they went to they got their master's in inner city and African American studies back in the 1970s. They studied under Dr. Ruth Carruthers. So and I heard somebody say, you say, what's the solution? I think the most part, the biggest thing from my perspective, I would think that is community, having grace with each other, as well as, in trying to stay on topic, but I went to Africa a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I thought about when I went to Africa, I went for a wedding. One of my friends, he's a Shanti, so he's from Ghana, he's a Shanti tribe. And one of the things that I went to is that I went to the Elmina slave port. And the first thing I thought about, so I saw the door and no return and everything. And I was thinking to my ancestors, I was praying, I was like, well, I return.
Yes.
I returned. I was like, so she knows the greatness, but also I think that the education is really important because with the youth, one of the things that I really don't like to hear, people say, I'm the first person in my family that graduated out of college because it's so much greatness in our bloodlines that I think we have to teach the youth that it's greatness in our bloodline. And specifically being over in the Elmina slave port, I thought about the ancestors that made the journey over here to America. And I was like, you had to be great to endure that. Then just being in the small rooms with 500 people chained to each other, and the women had to have babies, blood, snow, you had to share food. So it was humbling to me.
Also what they came from.
And
And they were enslaved. I mean, they left a community
Absolutely.
of love and sharing and richness that they were forced to put. And that's the psychic damage that African Americans have. I mean, that when you see that ocean and you were pulled from something else, it's just devastating.
Absolutely. So that's why I think it's the education. I think it's the community. Me personally, so I have a similar situation. My mother passed at 10 years old from breast cancer, and then my father passed away from prostate cancer at 28. But the good part about it is that a lot of their education that they're teaching still at a young age. So when I was going through the neighborhood, I grew up in the South Side of Chicago. Everything you hear, I grew up with. I just don't wear it on my sleeves. So I think that every time that I see a young Black man, I always try to help him out. I always try to give him education and say, you're not just surrounded. You can go through this. It's basically you're stronger than this. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna wind it up, but it's not because we're gonna be over. We're just gonna wind it up in this configuration. We have a light supper for everyone to enjoy. If you'd like to continue the conversation and stay for a bit, we invite you to do so. It's yummy delicious. But before we do that, I would like to get just some final thoughts, and I'll start with you, Pat.
I have so much going through my head right now, but two things. One is just from the work that I do every day and that I'm blessed to do, because I would be doing it anyway. We are constantly in conversation about how we've let technology drive storytelling, and now it's time to flip that and let storytellers drive and use the technology. And so love what you're saying, because you think about movement building, and if the technology that exists today had existed at other points in time, it could have been a different global, story around all that. So I'm excited to, and I think we all are, to continue that conversation, to explore. I know a lot of gamers that are looking at the culture that's created in games, that are looking at lots of ways that we can infiltrate and begin to actually turn it to a positive way of looking at self. So that's another whole aspect of this is how are we creating culture every day. And then the other thing, because it's been said in so many different ways, that a lot of the work that we need to do is on ourselves. It's an internal job that we've got to do. We've got to heal our own sense of separation between ourselves and whatever you call the greater spirit universe, whatever you call it. That sense of separation is dividing us. And so I feel like we got to take a step and go inward before we can actually go outward as much.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I'm so glad I came. Real quickly, I'm reading a book called A Little Intolerant Town. It's about how the schools were integrated in a little town close to me in Tennessee. Going to what you said, there's a she wrote in that book. She had 16 children and 6 of them died. And it points out they died from curable diseases. They died because they were poor. But this mother was determined to have her child to be a part of the desegregation of that school. And I thought about how many women and men gave so much that you'll never hear in the history book. And those are the stories we have to begin to tell. If I had another life to live, I would really find those stories and tell them and spread them. That's the first point. The second point I wanted to make is the Stono Rebellion, one of the first slave rebellions. They were all killed, but they won because we wouldn't be here if they hadn't won. Because although all of them were killed, the enslavers said, we'll never go back to that part of Africa and get another one because they were so courageous. So even though you may still feel like you're failing at something, you're not, because it took another 300 years before we got our freedom. My motto is, and I live by this, freedom is in the fight, victory is in the struggle.
Wow. I just want to say thank you, again, for being here. In my first language, and I'm, writing about languages these days, to say thank you is really to say to people that I see you and I see your work. And I recognize that everything you do, it's also for me, Iniche in Bamba. In Wolof, it would be closer to Jajef, thanking people for their action and recognizing that it's, what you do is also for me. And in Wolof, when we greet people, simply we say Nangadef, and people say Mangi Firek. And how are you doing? And the response is, I am here. I am here only. And we are here. We are here. And that's already, to me, a big win that we are here. I mean, I don't know anybody in my family who thought that I would ever make it on this shore and sit here and be with you here. So to me, that's the biggest win, that we are here. We are present, we are alive, and we are capable of connecting with each other. And we're not gonna let this go. we will connect our people. We will find a way to share our stories, and we will find a way to shift consciousness in this world about what it is to be human. And in Bambara, to be human is to be Black. Manifi. We are human because we are Black. Thank you.
Also, just have gratitude to be here, to hear the world that's in this room. And I just want to lift that up. There's a world in this room, there's a whole world, not only of skills and talents and stories, but just in our desire to uplift ourselves and each other. And so just that alone is enough. I just want to thank you for this world that you've introduced me to, which is you. Thank you, Tina.
All right, can you hear me? Yes. Because what it reminded me of is, growing up down south in the 50s and the 60s in South Carolina. I want everyone to know that the village of most Black Americans in this country is South Carolina, because that's where most Africans, who I stopped using the word slaves, most Africans came. That was the port in which they all embarked upon after that journey of being chained to the bottom of the boats and stuff. South Carolina, you meet more Black people in this country who will tell you, well, my grandparents are from South Carolina. That's our village. In Africa, they also, where's your village? So, but the thing that I just wanted to point out is because I think it's something that will help us be connected with each other. Is that we were always growing up, and it's still that way in the South now. You do not walk past another Black person without speaking.
You have to acknowledge and recognize you've seen it, you've been.
Speak. And, you know, and I was asked once by a white person, why do you guys all speak to each other? He said, because do you know each other? Yes. And in many ways, we do know each other. But we speak because we see each other. We see each other. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that could start in connecting all of us that are all in these all parts of the world, that we see each other. We know that we're connected and acknowledging each other just when, hey, good morning, whatever you do. Because you don't know how important that is sometimes for a person who is on the ground. I mean, when I'm in Africa, everywhere, you know, I speak to everybody. And people like, when they don't speak back to you, I mean, most of the women do speak, you know, but I said, because we see each other, we have to acknowledge each other. And that's part of us coming together. We have to start these little things to come together. And as small as that is so significant, even today. You know, we are speaking in Los Angeles. When I first came, I said, you know, people don't speak to each other. You know, and you know, I started speaking to people. Now, when you walk down the street, if I look at someone in their face, they speak. You know, because I'm looking, because they know I'm going to say something. But I think that that's such a simple thing, but it has such significance in terms of the connectivity.
I agree.
Don't know that we are every place else. The country that you were talking about, you know, Latin America, all, you know, they're all connected. And the reason why we use their is because the Black is what connects us. And Black is in different shades, different, but
Agreed. Even if you think when you do it, the person thinks you're crazy, but because I do it too. I'm always saying like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, sure.
I some people all the time, why don't you speak?
Okay, we're gonna stop now.
You do it together. We
Okay.
an African people. Yeah, I'll do it together. We are an African people. We are an African people. We are an African people. Don't you forget it. Don't you forget it. Farafina Farafiude. Farafina Farafiukoni. Bringing us back to 21st century songs. She taught us we are an African people and we translated in Bambara. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for coming. Please join us for a light there, just down the hall there, and stay in touch. Please look up USA for Africa. Please look up Creative Visions, and please look up sankofa.org and
Bridge Crossing Jubilee.
Bridge Crossing Jubilee. Awesome sauce. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina.
And Marie.
Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Helped us very much.